Hey, what's up? Lightbolt Joe here. Today we are going to discuss the 1947 classic Christmas film Miracle on 34th Street. Miracle on 34th Street. I've never seen this movie in the 30 years I've been alive. I've never seen this movie. I have an issue, it's a personal issue with black and white films. Most of the time you have to watch an old school film like you're watching theater, like you're watching a stage production. That's just how acting was back then. Before, intense special effects and cinematography and all the fancy doodads and color picture came into effect. I have nothing against it. It's just I need to be in that mindset to watch it. And a lot of the times I'm not in that mindset to watch it. So that's why I have a little problem with black and white films. The interesting thing is certain old movies that were either in color or like telecolored or black and white films that are called classics don't feel like you're watching a stage production, which is pretty interesting. Wizard of Oz came out in 1939. That's a good example of that. So I never felt like that was a stage production. There's been musicals since then, obviously, but I've never felt that that movie, the 1939 Wizard of Oz, was a stage production. Miracle on 34th Street is a prime example of that. This came out in 1947. Does not feel like you're watching a stage production. It feels like you're watching a movie. So my attention was right in there. It takes place in Manhattan, 34th Street and 7th Avenue. That is where Macy's and Herald Square is. The film plot is this guy comes about, joins the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade as Santa Claus, because his name is Kris Kringle, as he believes he's Santa Claus. And the Santa Claus that this woman Doris had hired, drunk. So he could not perform. So he gets on the sleigh. Then Macy himself, R.H. Macy, Mr. Macy, hires him to be, the Santa Claus for the department store. And then everybody starts to believe in him. All the kids believe in him. And then Santa Claus is like, hey, no, Macy's doesn't have this toy. Go to Gimbel. Gimbel sells this toy to certain moms. And then all these different moms from all over the place are like, wow, how generous Macy's is to willingly give up business to help the customer find what the child needs. We'll definitely come back to Macy's for future purchases. And then the revenue, obviously, went skyrocketed. So Mr. Macy and then Mr. Gimbel was seen taking a picture, shaking hands with Kris Kringle in the middle. Doris has a younger daughter named Susan. Susan meets Kris Kringle, doesn't believe in him. And then eventually, as the story progresses, she starts to believe in him. Doris as well doesn't believe and then eventually starts to believe. Their neighbor, Mr. Geary, I forget his name. He is an attorney who then eventually has to represent Kris Kringle against the state of New York, whether Kris has to be institutionalized or he is actually proved that he is the Kris Kringle. So then the U.S. Postal Service gets involved, and they are a government agency, and then they deliver the 50,000, Christmas letters to Santa Claus to the New York Supreme Justice, proof that Kris Kringle is in fact Santa Claus. Beautiful conclusion of that trial. And then Santa Claus gives, Mr. Geely and Doris and Susan instructions on, the fastest way to get back home. And then he takes them detoured through the suburbs on Long Island, and Susan makes them stop the car, and she runs into a house because she asked Santa Claus for a house, and turns out Santa Claus gave her a house. And that concludes the movie. So, because I've never seen this movie, 30 years in the making, I know some history. And more specifically, I know history on the RMS Titanic. Isidor Straus and his wife, Ida Straus. Isidor Straus was the CEO of Macy's, and he died with his wife, April 14th, 1912, aboard the sinking Titanic ship. His body was found. Ida's was never found. So his body was actually buried in the family's mausoleum. The family took water from the sink site, heartbreaking as this is, and put it in the mausoleum with Isidor's body because they never found Ida's body. We can talk about the Titanic and how tragic it is, for hours. But I know that in 1912, Isidor Straus, not R.H. Macy, was the CEO of Macy's, right? So if this movie takes place in 1947, when it came out in 1947, that means it was filmed in 1946. Isidor Straus long dead for 30 years prior to this movie, right? R.H. Macy, Roland Macy, was the founder of Macy's with his brother way back in the 1800s. So it's not factually, historically accurate that R.H. Macy, Roland H. Macy, is the CEO and founder of Macy's, as Mr. Macy, the character in this particular movie, but that's just the history nerd in me that knows these things. Good old retail. I love the premise. I love the let's all work together for the good of the companies. I like the, belief aspect. I like the joy and happiness aspect. I like the little kid Tommy going on the stand against his dad, because his daddy would never lie to him, and his daddy told him that Santa Claus is real, and I loved all of it. Absolutely loved all of it. So I have not seen the remake, the 94 remake. I know Richard, I never remember his name. He played John Hammond in Jurassic Park, but he plays the Kris Kringle character in the remake. But Macy's never signed off on using their name, so they had to create a whole different, retail chain to focus on Macy's character. But then also Gimbels didn't exist in that when that remake came out, so they had to do a different, historical fictitious name for that as well. But yeah, read up on Isidore and Ida Strauss. It's a beautiful love story, beautiful eyewitness accounts of their final moments on the ship. She literally gave her maid her fur coat and told her to get into a lifeboat, that she's not leaving her husband, that they live together, they're gonna die together, and it's whoa, okay. Too much emotion, but that's the benefit of these movies. It's Christmas movies. It brings out that emotion. It brings out that joy, that happiness, that love that these two people had for each other prior to perishing. So, Miracle on 34th Street, iconic classic that it is, 20th Century Fox film, way back in 1947. It is currently streaming on Disney Plus. Go check it out. Mucho mahalo.